Okay, so let me ask you, do you want to understand modes or do you want to be able to feel them? Alright, welcome back on my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about modes. Yes, I said it, the forbidden word. If you are around on YouTube and you're in a lot of guitar forums, then you know that the topic of modes is probably one of the most commonly discussed and also the most misunderstood topics of all the music theory topics. Why is that so? Yeah? Why is there such a disconnect of the theory and the explanation and the practical reality? Well, today I want to shed some more light on this. And by the end of this YouTube video, I hope that you have a better understanding of what you need to do to make friends with the modes, where it's not a question anymore of, oh, do I like modes? Do I need modes? No, but were you just able to recognize those awesome colors in music and you're able to use them, especially when you play over chord progressions that are not just staying in one key, but they're shifting the colors, where you will be able to recognize these colors intuitively and then just intuitively find the right notes on the fretboard. How does that sound? Isn't that better than just knowing the modes? All right, so let's get started. Okay, so before we get started, we do need to lay down some foundations. We actually first need to know which modes are we talking about, because there also seems to be a lot of discussion or, people saying like, yeah, but there are so many modes. There's endless amount of modes out there, and it's true. There is an endless amount of modes out there because every scale can be basically brought down to as many modes as there are notes in the scale. Yeah? But we're just gonna focus today on the most commonly used modes that are completely plenty for you to get started and get a feel for the colors that are most commonly used in pop music. So here are the colors that you need to know. I'm gonna keep them all in E because we're guitar players and E is our sonic reference, isn't it? E Ionian or the major scale. So instead of talking which intervals are in this scale, let's talk about what it really sounds like, what it feels like. Yeah? To me, this sounds very friendly. Sunny is another word comes to my mind. Open, light. Those are the words I would associate with this sound. Yeah? So what you need to do is you need to just start on one string, put on the drone, play the same intervals here that I listed here when I was playing. And yeah, just play them and get them into your feel and try to store that sunny sound in your system. So this is the major scale, Ionian. The next color that you need to know that I want to introduce you to is very similar. Just one note is changing. I'm talking about Lydian. Let's check it out. Almost the same, right? But here is where the twist comes. Do you hear the difference? Yes, my friend. All right, so just one note difference, but a whole new universe starts opening up, right? So Lydian, it's like the mysterious sister of Ionian, the major scale, right? Sounds mysterious. It sounds eclectic. It sounds, for me, like transcendent, kind of otherworldly. Those are the words I would associate, but maybe you have different words for them. Yeah? So again, you want to jam on this sound and really get this special tension in your system when you go from the fifth to the sharp 4. And you want to find your own ways of how you can release from that tension note back to a non-tension note, usually the 5 or the 3rd, because you're not gonna hit that sharp 4 arbitrarily. Some shape or form, you're gonna resolve it back to a stable note. So train yourself in that. All right, we're moving on to the next color, which is a very popular color, and this is our Mixolydian. Yeah, but forget the term for a second. Yeah? We are basically playing the blues major scale. Check it out. Can you hear it? I'm going on a B string. That's our Mixolydian. If you compare that with the major scale, sounds very different, right? It's a whole new world again. Huh? So yeah, I think the term bluesy major describes it perfectly. I want to add though this, next to the bluesy and gutsy, what would come to my mind, I also hear Indian, yeah, because this has an Indian sound to me, yeah. So if I was gonna play here, maybe you can start to hear it. Maybe it's also the reason that, when I was a teenager, I listened to the awesome John McLaughlin, and I also listened to the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And they would use a lot of Indian note material, yeah? And a lot of that stuff is Mixolydian. And then later on, I would listen to Jeff Beck and Jan Hammer, who played in the Mahavishnu Orchestra, keyboard of Jeff Beck. So if you don't know these connections, you need to check them out. Yeah? And you need to check out some of Jeff Beck tunes that use Mixolydian that sound very, very much Indian in the note quality. Yeah? So, for me, opening a channel like that, where you start to feel the emotion of a note set, that is way more powerful than learning about scales and intervals. So in that sense, we're here to discover the moods and not the modes. And that's even something that Duke Ellington said. It's all about the mood and not the modes. All right, so to summarize, we just had 3 major modes, right? We got Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. Let's hit the 3 minor modes. So we got the minor scale. Yeah, can you hear it? It's an awesome color, right? To me, it sounds very melancholic, little bit dark, a little bit sad, but not too sad. It's just a little bit subdued. It's one of the most beautiful sounds for me, actually. I can relate to the minor more than to the major. And I remember, especially as a teenager, maybe you can relate to that too. You know, when I was playing the minor pentatonic, I was doing just fine in the minor territory, but when I had to play over a major progression, it always felt like foreign and just too happy. Yeah, so this sound is awesome, yeah? And I want to point out that we got a flat 6 in there, and this contributes a lot to this sad, mourning kind of quality. So you want to milk that 6th when you play, yeah? So play around with the phrasing here, you know? So you don't have to play just on one string, but it really, really helps to focus on the intervals and focus on the tension and release of, you know, how you're gonna connect the colors here, how the flow is of the intervals, yeah, in this particular mode. So for discovering the modal colors and the moods, I really recommend you stick firmly to playing on one string over the drone. All right, next one. Again, we're just changing one note. See what happens here. Which one is that? Of course, you're gonna know. Yeah. All right, how does that sound? Sounds very Middle Eastern, dark, mysterious, maybe dangerous even, right? Tension, oriental, those will be the words I associate with this. Yeah? And I actually have been living in Turkey for more than 5 years, so I got a special connection with this Phrygian sound. Or a lot of the Turkish pop music is actually Phrygian. Yeah? It's a very common color. Yes, it's all about milking that flat 9. That's where I was. So, all right, so one more color here with the minor modes. This one you're probably going to be very familiar with. It sounds like this. Yeah, you recognize it? So again, this has a minor sound, but now it sounds a little brighter, a little bit more forward. Some people will also say it sounds bluesy. Well, this is the Dorian mode, yeah? And the Dorian mode is very much related to the Mixolydian mode. It also has a flat 7, which is the bluesy interval, yeah? It's what we find in all our blues scale stuff. So, in a way, it's like, you know, the Dorian is the minor version of the Mixolydian, if you think about it. And it's just the third is the only different note between Mixolydian and Dorian. So there's this bridge going on. Yes, so the Dorian is also used a lot in Latin music. And if you think of Carlos Santana, you know, he's probably the most prominent example of just milking that Dorian sound like crazy. So if you're not familiar with Oye Como Va, you gotta check out this tune. Because this is like the epitome of Dorian playing, basically. Yeah? So yeah, very good to know. So now we got the 6 modes. So yes, so by now the modes, it shouldn't be abstract scales anymore, but now you should have 6 differentiated sounds that you can use to improvise. Now the next question is, how do we use the modes? Well, if we have a drone situation like this, where there's just a root note and nothing else, no chords, that's really the only situation where you can pick and choose which modes to use, and you can just create the mood on your own, because all you have is the root note. But if there's any kind of chord progression, then you, not only you, everyone, needs to stick to the harmonic context. What do I mean by that? Well, it starts very simple. If your one chord, let's say we're in E here, if your one chord is a minor chord, then you're not going to play a major mode or major scale over it. I hope that makes sense. So then we just have to know which one of the 3 is it. Is it going to be Dorian, Phrygian, or Aeolian, the regular minor? And that depends on our harmonic context. Now this is going to be a little more complicated than just playing the mode over one string, but this is actually the essence of your modal understanding. The essence of your modal understanding is that the chords underneath your melody pretty much determine which modal color or which modal environment we're in. I'm going to show you what I mean. So I'm just going to make an example, and then we're going to break it down. So let's start with Phrygian actually. I got an E minor chord. And then I'll play this chord here. The second chord is an F major. Do you hear the Phrygian sound? So how is this possible? How can I have 2 chords and get the Phrygian sound? Well, now we need to look at the intervals, yeah? So we were saying in Phrygian we have a flat 9. So if I play a major chord on the flat 9 or the flat 2, which is the same note, yeah? So F sharp major has an F, the root note, that's our flat 9. Then we got the A, which is a 4. Then we got a C note in there, which is our flat 6 in the key of E, yeah? Can you hear it? And then we got the E, which is our root note, yeah? So we got flat 6, 4, and the flat 9. So these notes all add in to actually give us the Phrygian sound. So you only need 2 chords to create a Phrygian sound. All right, let's continue with this, yeah? So we're still here in E minor. So let's do something else here. All right, so do you recognize this sound from earlier? This is the Dorian sound, yeah? So what's happening here in the Dorian? Well, here in the Dorian, I was playing a major chord on the 4. So if we're in E minor, that would be an A major. And this chord is actually the characteristic chord for Dorian, yeah? A 4 major chord, even though we're in a minor sound, yeah? And what does that major give us? Yeah? It gives us another set of notes. E is the 5th of A. Then we got the C sharp, that's the 3rd of A. And in the key of E, this is actually the major 6th. Yeah? So that's the added note, and the A is just the 4th in E. Yeah? So this gives us the 6th in there. Yeah? And that's exactly the Dorian characteristic mood interval. So you might also recognize here the chords of Breathe, the Pink Floyd song, right? Same thing, yeah? Also Dorian. Yes. So whenever you have a minor key and you have a 4 chord that's major, you're automatically gonna have a Dorian constellation. That's how it works. All right, one more in minor. we got the regular minor, right? So check this out. So we got this C chord. Can you hear it? Yeah. Now we got the Aeolian or regular minor modal environment, because we got a C in there. That's our flat 6. Now we got a flat 6 in there, not like Dorian, which has a major 6, the C sharp note. And we also have in C here an E, that's just the root note, and the G, that's the third of E minor. Does that make sense? Now, if you're new to this might take a while to sink in, but the important lesson for you here is that it really all depends on the chords. And understanding the chords will make you understand the modal environment and which mode to actually play. All right, so let's have a quick look here at the major ones. Major chord on the 1. And major chord on the 2. Can you hear the Lydian color? It's awesome, right? Yes. So that's a Lydian sound. What does that give us? Yeah, we have F sharp. So that's just 2 notes. Yeah, and then we got the third. That will be A sharp. That's our raised 4. That's our Lydian interval. And then the C sharp is just the 6th, yeah? So that gives us the raised sharp, the characteristic mood interval for Lydian. All right, E Mixolydian, check it out. Okay, which chord is that? I'm playing a B minor chord here. That's a minor chord on the 5. Now compare this to a regular major chord on the 5, which would be a regular sunny B major. And now I got... Can you hear how awesome, a little darker, a little more bluesy this color gets? So this is a Mixolydian mode. It has a minor chord on the 5, and automatically we know we are in Mixolydian land. So yeah, what does that add for us? We got the B, we got the D. The D is the minor third of B minor, but it's also the flat 7 of E Mixolydian. So that's our magic note here, our modal coloring note. Yeah, one left, right? We already had it actually. Now we played major. I can just play a 5 chord, major 5 chord, and we already know that we are in major, because now we have the D sharp in here, the major third of B major, and this is also the major 7 of E Ionian. All right, so that was a mouthful and a handful, right? Knowing all these intervals and knowing your notes on the fretboard and just all that mumbo jumbo, right? But I want you to get the biggest takeaway from this tutorial here, and that is that it's all about the moods. And it's all about understanding the chordal context. Everything else is really just theory talk without any practical relevance, you know, which note to start on, and the modes are just like different starting places from the major scale. Yeah, so what? Is that gonna help you to play over chord progression? This is gonna help you to actually play, because you're gonna hear like, we are in the key of E minor and there's an F chord. This is Phrygian. Or there's an F sharp chord. This is Lydian. So this is really gonna help you, because suddenly those chords are gonna make sense chords that are not in your regular minor or major scale. It's gonna start to make sense. Awesome. So I hope you got a ton out of this tutorial. I just want to encourage you to keep things simple, practice the moods first on one string, and don't let yourself be confused by all this thinking action, but just focus on what you feel when you hear those modes, because that's going to be the driving force to make you a confident improviser that can play and juggle with all these awesome modal colors. If you want to learn more about voice leading and figure out how it all works, how you can improvise with more melodic freedom, then I highly recommend you get my new melodic chordal soloing course. If you are someone who wants to play with more melodic freedom, but you've been struggling to put together all the puzzle pieces, then I've got the perfect solution for you. Introducing my melodic chordal soloing course that will break down the Hendrix chordal style for you as a must-know melodic device of your improvisational toolkit, including tabs, fretboard diagrams, and practice worksheets. Click on the link below, start working on it today, and by tomorrow, you're gonna hear results. Yes, that's right. Check out my new course. That's gonna open your eyes and ears even more. This was one of my longest tutorials here on YouTube, but I think it's also one of the most important topics. And to send you off, I'm just gonna play a little more in this modal context, and maybe now you're able to actually hear the colors of my solo.